2 days down at the Cheltenham Festival, and the focus now is on St Patrick's Day, the Thursday, day number 3, and it's Ben Fearnley's turn to run through the card with us and give his best bets on the card. And Ben, how have you found it so far?
It's been good. There's been some really good races. I haven't, from a punting point of view, I've not really got properly stuck into anything yet. I think the week for me will hinge on Native River and the Gold Cup. That's my sort of main anti-post bet. And to be honest, I'm glad that I'm doing this Thursday preview because it's the day when I've actually going to have a fair few bets myself, whereas the Tuesday and the Wednesday I've mainly kept the powder dry, to be honest. So I'm glad that I'm doing this day. I think it's a tricky card, as we were saying earlier. It's a tricky day, a few really tough handicaps. So I think it's a card that if you do manage to fire even one in, then you're well up. So let's hope we can do that.
Yeah, a day that separates the men from the boys,
Definitely,
the girls from the ladies. And we kick off with the JLT Novices Chase. 10 runners heading to post here, and you've put up a Napa next best and a long shot on the microsite, and you have a long shot fancy here.
Yeah, the long shot in this would be Big Martra for Harry Whittington. He's around 16 to 1 currently. I mean, the two at the top of the market have done absolutely nothing wrong, really. Terraforts looked really impressive, especially on winning both his British starts for Nicky Henderson. I suspect there's going to be plenty more to come from him. An Invitation Only was obviously finished third in that Good Flogus Novice. Obviously, perhaps have liked Monolly to finish a bit closer to presenting Percy today to really give that form a proper boost. But it still looks a good bit of form. I can see why they're at the top of the market. The case for Big Martra at a big price, it'd be an each way, definitely a small each way bet. Not necessarily expecting him to win. He's essentially just looked completely transformed by going over fences. He spent a few seasons over hurdles, but he really has looked a natural. Won his first 2 races, Ludlow and Newbury, and then I think some people might have been put off by the fact he was beaten in a handicap last time, but I think he was given the win of weight, and it was all part of his process of getting better and better on each run. I think he's got a little bit more to offer. He should stay 2.5 miles, and he hasn't really raced much over 2.5 miles either, so that's an avenue for improvement. I'm not saying he's going to win, but I think at 16 to 1 he could be a one to have a small each way bet on in what is an open race behind the top 2, I think, in the betting.
Okay, so Big Martra there, and we move into a very easy Pertemps handicap hurdle here. One of the toughest handicaps of the entire festival, and an 8 to 1 favourite here in Glenlow. Yeah,
I mean, this. Having said that, this is a card that I'm going to be getting stuck into. This isn't a race that I've got a really strong view on, to be honest. The Pertemps. I think obviously JP McManus, looking at our adjusted ratings, has got 4 of the top 5 on the adjusted ratings, and the fact that Geraghty's on Glenlow might well be key. He's obviously favourite, and whether you want to be backing a favourite in a field like this, which is just so competitive, one of the most competitive races of the week nowadays. Look, I don't have a strong view. A great view was the one that I had in my mind coming into this. But I mean, he's caught the eye on a number of occasions. He was second at Leopardstown in a qualifier for this race, and then he wasn't knocked about at all when 5th last time. But the problem is Jodie McGarvey, the jockey, not really a name that means much to me. I mean, a few people might know who she is. I've looked.
I'm sure it's a
he. Sorry,
yeah.
A few people might know who he is, but he's had very few rides under rules in the last few seasons anyway, so that would put me off. I think I'd rather have, if Mark Walsh was on a Great View, I'd probably be more keen, but I'd still think a Great View would be my tentative selection, but I don't think I'm going to back anything in the race. It's very tough.
Okay, a Great View there, and onto the Ryanair Chase, which a bit of a mouth-watering card on paper really here, because Duvan, he ran today and he fell today. Enderso's favourite here at 5 to 4 him to make it back-to-back wins. Yeah, it would have been a mouth-watering clash. And Duvan, obviously, good to see him get up today. He was going with a lot of zest, wasn't he, at the time? And really, it's a shame that we didn't see that unfold properly. But yeah, with him out, obviously there was a bit of to and fro in the markets, wasn't there, when Duvan was declared for both races, and Rich Ritchie was saying that Duvan might come here and he wanted to run here and stuff. But in the event, we've got Enderso, who essentially, this isn't a strong racing behind him, is it? I don't think now. It does get a bit of stick with Ryanair for being
a bit of a lower quality Grade 1. It's somewhere in between the likes of the Gold Cup and the Champion Chase, isn't it, in terms of distance, and it's very much below them in terms of quality usually. But under So, he's a classy animal. He's a proper Grade 1 horse, isn't he? And he deserves to be favourite. I'd be very surprised if he gets beaten, to be honest. He goes really well on testing ground. One thing to mention, actually, I should have said this at the start, but I think they are due a lot of rain in the morning. Overnight, early morning, there's going to be a fair bit of rain, so I don't see, obviously conditions are fairly tacky today, soft and heavy in places. I don't see that change. I think it's might even get a little bit more testing, and that will suit him down to the ground. He goes really well in the mud. He won here, he won this last year on quicker ground, but he's probably even better on a softer surface, to be honest. Obviously got Q Card up against him. He ran really well last time in that Ascot Chase. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go backwards from that, to be honest. I think that was his sort of target. I think it's a race that he'd won a couple of times in the past, a race that he'd won by a wide margin the previous season, and he'd obviously not been firing at the start, and they brought him back, freshened him up, and I think that was his Cup final. I know he wasn't particularly drilled in the betting or anything like that, but just looking at the pattern of his races, I wouldn't be surprised if he was really wound up and really ready for that. And perhaps that this is just now an afterthought, a last festival hurrah for him. Obviously, it'd be great to see him go upsides, wouldn't it? And so that this might be still, despite a smallish field and not many exciting horses, if those two go for it from the front, then we could still have one of the races of the week, couldn't we? But I think Under So is the most likely winner. Don't think there's a great deal in behind, to be honest.
I've heard a few whispers for Cloudy Dream. I think they're bullish about his chances.
Yeah. I mean, he is definitely going to be suited. To me, I don't see him as a 3-miler, and the fact that he's coming back to 2.5, albeit on testing ground, I think can only help him. Obviously, he was beaten at Newbury last time comfortably by Native River, but I wouldn't read too much into that. He was just sort of trotting round. I think this is definitely his trip. I wouldn't be surprised if he ran well. I just still think probably a flatter track would be ideal for him. He's quite a strong traveller, isn't he? And obviously he's won at the likes of Ayr and run well at Aintree, hasn't he, in the past? So maybe a flatter track would be completely ideal. I wouldn't be surprised to see him. Obviously he ran second in the Arkle here, didn't he? Rather picking up the pieces, but still he's got Cheltenham form. So he could be one, like you say, at a bigger price. Something's going to get involved. But Under So, I think, is really the most likely winner.
So definitely not Duvan in the Ryanair Chase. Under So the pick there. And we move on to the feature today, the Stayers Hurdle. And the Northern Raider, Sam Spinner's the 4-1 favourite. Are you with or against him?
I'd really like to see him win, not from a financial point of view. I've not backed him. And in fact, I would be, if he won, I'd be watching it through gritted teeth, because the only time I've backed him this season was at Chepstow when he was second and probably should have won, and he was still a bit babyish and green and came over the last and just sort of ran about a bit, and he was the moral winner, and obviously he's just gone on from that and gone from strength to strength, and it'll be a great story. Jed O'Keefe's obviously a small trainer, mainly flat based, doesn't have many jump sources at all, so for him to have a 7-2 favourite for a Grade 1 is a brilliant story for racing, and I wouldn't begrudge Sam Spinner winning this race at all. I think 7-2 is probably the right price for all that he's got his conditions. He clearly acts very well on testing ground. I wouldn't put you off him if you want to steam into him. I don't think it's the worst bet in the world, but for me, I think there are him being 7-2 opens up a few more options. In behind him in the betting, you've got the likes of Super Sunday, who, although he's won here and he has run well over 3 miles, I don't think 3 miles on really testing ground is what he wants. It might stretch his stamina. Obviously he was second over 3 miles at Aintree, but it was much different conditions. So I wouldn't be surprised if he came up a bit short just at this level over this sort of trip. Yanworth, you can't really fully trust him, can you? I mean, he's got the ability to win this, no doubt about it, but he does tend to mess about a bit when he gets to the front, doesn't he? And I wouldn't particularly trust him with my money at about 5-1. So the one I'm going to be backing myself at around 8 or 9-1 is Bacardi's, the Mullins runner. Obviously, Ruby Walsh presumably won't be on. I think obviously I've heard no updates, but I think they're suspecting broken leg for him, so that's really unfortunate for him to come back and then all of a sudden be injured again. Really sad for him, but I'm sure I'm not really worried about another jockey taking over. I think that he has essentially always wanted 3 miles, and he's yet to tackle it over fences or hurdles. He stayed on really well to win the Deloitte last season, the Grade 1 over in Leopardstown, and he looked a big player for the Neptune, but he essentially went off at 4-1. He got really badly hampered at the 5th, and essentially that was it for him. He was just pulled up after that. He then won at Punchestown over 2.5, again staying on really strongly, shaped it as if 3 miles would be what he wanted. They tried him over fences. He's obviously from a pointing background, so you would do. He's obviously bought for chasing, but he essentially hasn't jumped well enough to make it so far, and he's 0 from 2 in that sphere, falling last time. But I've got no problem with him coming back to hurdles. I think Willie Mullins does this sort of thing, chopping and changing between chases, fences and hurdles very well. Obviously did it with the mare that won on Tuesday, so that wouldn't be a negative for me. And I think the fact that he hasn't had 3 miles yet really makes him interesting now, stepping up to that trip. He's a horse that I've had in mind for staying races for some time, a few seasons now, and this is the first time, so I can't let him go and backed, especially at around 8 or 9-1.
And he's your nap for tomorrow as well?
Yeah, he would be, yeah. Definitely around that price. For all that I respect Sam Spinner, I don't think that many of the others in this race are going to be that competitive. I could see it boiling down to a couple of them really, and Sam Spinner and Bacardi's would probably be those two. I think the ground's gone against Penn Hill. He came from the flat, and the Albert Bartlett that he won last year was a real test of speed relative for that race, and it was on much different ground. Harry seems to have just be on the decline now, doesn't he? Obviously a horse that's run well in this race before. Little Rockefeller, could he really win one of these? I don't think he could. He'll probably run well again. He might finish 3rd. The new one he'll be fine under the conditions, but I just question whether he's really a Grade 1 animal nowadays. And I've already mentioned the other few at the top that might be vulnerable for various reasons. So I think this could easily come down to Sam Spinner and Bacardi's, and at the prices, Bacardi's is definitely the one. Okay,
on to another fiendishly difficult handicap, the Brown Plate. 8-1 the field here. Where do you start with a race like this?
Yeah, this is tough, isn't it? I mean, I've been through most of the runners. One thing I will say is Tully East's. They've had the ground massively go against them. He was favourite for this race from a long-term point of view. Obviously, he ran in the Bet Victor and essentially was travelling strongly throughout and really caught the eye, but didn't really get home under the conditions. And obviously, his win at the festival in the Close Brothers last season was on really rattling quick ground. So they've definitely had conditions go against them. The other ones near the top of the market, you've got the likes of the Storyteller. I think he will probably be competitive. Obviously, Gordon Elliott's just banged in another winner, hasn't he, in the Fred Winter just now, so couldn't be. He had a slow start, but he's certainly making up for it now. He's lightly raced. I wouldn't put anyone off him. The one that I'm going to have a bet on is Willie Boy, Venetia Williams's. This isn't in my 3 bets that I'm going to put up on the website, but I will be having a small bet on Willie Boy. It's hard to have a confident punt in a race like this. It's such an open race. But I was really impressed with him when he won at Newbury. It wasn't a particularly deep race, and the likes of Henry Parry Morgan hasn't really gone on and done much since. But the way he did it, he was up with a strong pace throughout, and you just saw every time going down the back straight, you just thought he's got to fold up, he's got to tie up now, because he's done so much up front, and he just kept going, and I thought that was a pretty impressive performance for him to do that. He's still very lightly raced over fences. I'd forgive his run next time. He'd had a hard race 3 weeks earlier, and he's been kept off since. This is a race, obviously Venetia hasn't been having the best of seasons, we must say, and that's probably why this horse is available at 16 plus rather than 10s, because in previous years this would have looked a horse that she'd plotted up for this race. That she hasn't been having the best of years, but traditionally this is a race that she's done well in. I think looking back the last sort of 8 renewals, she's won a couple of them, and a 1-2 one year as well. So it's no bad thing that she trains the horse, even though she's a little bit quiet. So I'd give a positive mention to Willie Boy. It could be worth a small bet at 16s, but it's wildly competitive.
Yeah, Venetia's traditionally love the mud as well.
They do, yeah, and the conditions will be fine for that horse. He's won really bad ground round Uttoxeter, and so he won't mind. And like you say, the yards traditionally go very well on this sort of ground.
Okay, so the fiendishly difficult brown advisory plate there. Onto the Mayor's Novices Hurdle, which hopefully could be a bit more straightforward because we've got a hot pot here in the form of Lorena.
Yeah, and for all that I really do like Maria's Benefit, I think she's been really, really impressive, and the way she goes about things just makes her so likeable. I can't really see her beating Lorena here unless something untoward happens, a fall or something like that. She has just looked really, really impressive. That win last time by 11 lengths in a Grade 3 just completely took them apart. We know these sorts of races, these mares races, there's no one better than Willie Mullins to get them ready and source them and all the rest of it. And I think she'll be really hard to beat, to be honest. It's one of those where there's a big field, but there's only really a couple of them really probably that can win it. Lorena, Maria's Benefit, you wouldn't be surprised. And Henderson, Dame de Compagnon might run okay as well, but to be honest, I'll just keep it short. I think Lorena's probably going to win.
Excellent stuff, and one to go on day number 3. The Kim Muir, another tricky handicap. 23 runners here, and a 5-1 favourite in the form of Squatter.
Yeah, now this is a race. I was looking at the market, and I honestly could strike off a number of them. It's not normal for you to look at for me to look at a festival handicap and think, well, I definitely don't want to back that. Definitely don't want to back that. But this was honestly one of those races because. As you mentioned, Squatter, or however you say his name,
that's how you pronounce it.
He's a horse that you always have to say his name a lot because he's been favourite for. This is the 3rd festival he's been favourite, I think, or something along those lines. Anyway, he's always very well backed. He's got JJ Codd on, so he will be popular. But he ran in this race last year, and his jumping just didn't come up to the test at all. And for me, that's a massive negative. He was really well backed for it last year. The bookies have sort of got to take a fairly evasive stance on it. I understand that, but at the same time, I think you've got to be crazy if you back a horse that essentially came up short in the jumping department last year at 5-1 in a big field like this. So I was against him. Some of the other ones you've got up there at the top of the betting, Maldini, he ran it last year. He looked like a big plot horse throughout the season for the race. Probably been aimed at it again. Obviously, Patrick Kelly's already had an excellent winner for the same owner today in presenting Percy. But Maldini, again, he was another one. He came up short last year, didn't have any obvious excuses. He was 5th, I think. The race hasn't worked out brilliantly. The likes of Pendra was obviously in there as well. He was 2nd, but he's not been seen since. He's up there at the top of the betting. So I thought Sugar Baron, another one that I'd be against in this sort of conditions because he doesn't jump well enough and he will get behind. He might well be one of the strongest finishers in the whole race, but I think he's just going to give himself too much to do by making jumping errors. So there was loads of them that I was willing to take on, and for that reason I've landed on Band of Blood, who is a classic Dr. Richard Newland project. He didn't look at it when he first joined the yard. He took a few starts to really find his feet. He left Mouse Morris early 2016, had about 5 starts for this yard, and then he wasn't seen for nearly 2 years. He's come back in Veterans Company, and he's won twice, very impressively, at Exeter, sluicing through the mud, and then working a little bit harder, but still with plenty in hand at Doncaster last time, just 10 days on. He's not a typical veteran. Veterans races can be weaker affairs, but I get the feeling that he's essentially just won those pretty easily. And he is only a 10-year-old, so he was the lowest age to qualify for a veterans race. He's gone in, he's won a couple, but he's been put up in the weights, but he's still on a very, very good mark on some of his older form. If you look back for Mouse Morris, he was in the 2015 Irish National, he was 4th, not beaten over 10 lengths, but traded at very, very short odds on him running, having travelled really well and simply not got home over 3 mile 5. Obviously this is a lot less. I think that he's about 3 or 4 pounds higher. Sorry, he's on the exact same BHA mark now as he was when he finished 4th in that race. He's got James King on, he's a very capable amateur. I think he makes plenty of appeal in this, and he's my next best in a race where honestly just struck so many of them off. One of them that I've poo-pooed will go and win now, but I'm pretty keen on Band of Blood, and he's probably got a bit more to offer for this current yard. We know how it goes. He does so well with these new recruits, Dr. Richard Newland, and he looks like he's done it again here.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for that.
Okay,
Ben.
no
Cheers.
worries. Good luck.